By the time that war boss Gorgut's avalanching Wa rescued Lacune, there was little that the Dark Eldar could have done to defend themselves or escape with their lives. Thinking their moonbase safe from notice or harm, they had squandered any chance of rebuffing the orcs that they could possibly have gained. Taril's humiliating defeat sent him, as Drubael Vect, and sundry other Dark Eldar fleeing back into the Webway to their home city of Komara. Meanwhile, Gorguts and his orc mobs had invented a new sport, which involved putting Dark Eldar into their own cages and seeing how far they could throw them in the moon's reduced gravity. Several knobs attempted to harness and tame the warp beasts they found, but without any luck. Gorguts did not let his orcs linger for long, however. Ultimately, Lacune was one in a line of provinces to be crushed by his unstoppable Wa. If War Boss Gorguts had learned anything in his many years leading the orcs, it's that the Eldar, or Pointy Ears, were trouble, and it was best to crush them as soon as you had the chance. When his caravan boys found themselves in the hot sandy barrens of the Upper Waste, he gave them a good talk, warning them that they'd have to be the sharpest-eyed, fastest, choppiest orcs ever known. While it might not be said that the orcs anticipated every move of the quick-witted and devious Eldar, they certainly proved that orcish strength and resilience could stand up to any such trickiness. Pressed hard by the avalanche of orcs, the Eldar fought frantically, and then, overwhelmed, succumbed. The fact that some Eldar, including the Farseer Carries, were able to retreat to their last Webway gate before the advancing orcs troubled Gorguts very little. He had won. The orcs scoured the area, uncovered the many caches and depots hidden within the stronghold's grounds, and smashed a great deal of it with triumphant enthusiasm. As far as War Boss Gorguts was concerned, the Necrons were no more than a vast army of little mechs. True enough, some of the boys seemed a bit unnerved by the dark metal battalions that massed like a lake at the base of the exhumed necropolis on the Emosan coast. But Gorguts simply made sure that they were more frightened by him, and they fought good enough. Although he'd had his doubts, the victory over the Necrons was as good a proof as any, in Gorguts' eyes, that the Kalraven boys were worth their squigs. They had a tough time of it, descending into the bowl of death among the hot sands. But as Gorguts figured these things, orcs were for fighting, and there was nothing better than a good hard fight so long as you won. Sure, that Deceivi thing had come up and turned his boys' heads this way and that, but they beat it good in the end. The warlord Gorguts took it as a personal affront that the Tau had chosen a base of operations on the moon directly above the Orc Enclave in the Rockclaw Mountains of Karavatu. More offensive still was the Arca Cannon, which exemplified the Tau principle of fighting from a safe and tactical distance. Of course, almost anything could offend Gorguts, and he would have come to attack the Tau sooner or later just because they were there. Had Commander Or-Eska succeeded in finishing the defenses of his moon-based fortress, the orcs might have beaten themselves bloody against its shielded outer walls. Unfortunately, the smallest breach in those walls was like a crack in a dam. Once through, the orcs closed the distance on the ranks of fire warriors and crushed them beneath their massive forms. While much was looted by the orc hordes, Gorguts claimed the Arca Cannon for himself, planning to use the biggest guns. he had ever seen to aid his Wa.